Lydden Hill in Kent opens up the 2005 British Rallycross Championship. There's a very strong field for this year's campaign, which should once again make for some awesome action. The fight for the 2004 crown was yet another thriller-minute affair, with Lawrence Gibson generally in the thick of it. He and his Metro 6R4 led for the best part of the season, but crashed out in the latter half, leaving the 2003 champion Dermot relatively unchallenged as the Irishman went on to retain the title. And that's the 6th time his name has been engraved on the trophy. As in previous years, the pace was fast and furious in the Supermodified class, with a number of drivers finding themselves on the top step of the podium during the 2004 season. However, the real story during the year was that of Dave Bellerby in the Vauxhall Nova, who suffered a broken arm and a leg in the early part of the series, yet somehow he managed to overcome his injuries to return to racing, ultimately culminating in lifting the crown at the series end. In the Supercar category, last year John McCluskey enjoyed his most consistent season to date, a statement which could only apply to fellow Irishman Lawrence Gibson. He could have even won the crown had it not been for this big crash 2/3 of the way through the season. Thankfully, he escaped relatively unscathed. The most consistent driver of the year usually wins the title, and Dermot Carnegie's success was undoubtedly due to the fact that he consistently won the Supercar final throughout the year. Lydden Hill is the start of 8 rounds this year instead of the usual 10. And there's been many memorable rallycross races at Lydden in the past, so let's take a look at what the drivers have to contend with. Across the start line and up through the gears, you'll see as we go around the loose gravel, the modified cars are in 2nd gear, but it's 3rd gear around here for the big supercars. And this is where the cars go down sideways, then it's back out onto the tarmac and the section known as Dover's Slope. A quick blast along here, then it's up towards the corner known as Devil's Elbow. Again, it's 2nd gear for the modifieds and 3rd for the supercars. At the apex, it's a move right to the outside of the track, then a climb up around the north bend. 4th gear for the supercars, then straight into 2nd. Down Hairy Hill, 2nd, 3rd, 4th gears. Speeds can reach 100 and 120 miles an hour here into 3rd. Through the gravel, over the start line, then 4th gear. Approach into the big right-hander for the 2nd time before slotting into 3rd for the drift, and then careful as they go on towards the finish line. In the Supercar class is George Tracy. The Dubliner has enjoyed success in many forms of 4-wheel motorsport, but this year he's looking to really stamp his mark on the Rallycross Championship following the acquisition of this Peugeot 306. And this is the Peugeot that John McCluskey finished 3rd overall in last year. So George should be able to better his best ever placing of 4th at Nuts Corner back in 2003. Will Gollop returns to Lydden Hill, this time praying for better luck following the woes he endured during previous visits to this circuit. In the first of 2 visits last season, he suffered an engine failure whilst leading the Supercar final and was then forced to retire in the Superfinal on his return to the series in round 7. Once more though, he is putting his faith in the Ford Focus RS, which he's been using now since 2003. So there's still a question mark regarding completing a full season.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do this season. I don't know whether I'm going to do all British Championship or... It's looking at the moment, I'll just do selected events really, and because this is a local event to me, it's why I'm here. They watered it a couple of races before we went out and it was very difficult. But had an oil pressure sensor tell us we got no oil pressure, so I stopped. And when we came in, it was just the sensor that was faulty, not the engine, so that was a relief.
Also at his home circuit, Pat DORAN is looking for the start of an upturn in his fortunes following a disappointing 2004 campaign. somewhat sadly, he's replaced the championship-winning RS2000 with a 2-litre Ford Fiesta that's inspired new confidence in him despite getting to know the car.
I think this will be the best season ever, so it's going to be a real battle this year. This year the cars are all restricted, whereas last year you had the option of carrying the weight or running a restrictor. This year all the cars are restricted, which will make it very cool racing. It's the car I'm having a problem with because I've not driven the thing up to today, so it's learning the car. The circuit I've been here hundreds of times. EGR valve fell off the manifold, giving me no boost, so the first seat we had no boost at all.
Steve Mundy found himself on the podium steps more than once last season, and again he's looking to the Ford Focus to deliver the goods and improve on 4th overall position that he drove to in the Supercar category. Despite some impressive performances in the Superfinals during the mid-season section, he could only end the season 9th in the British Rallycross Championship. Andy Grant has a new turbo setup in addition to the Ford Escort WRC, which he hopes will reap dividends for him this season. 5th overall in the Rallycross Championship and the Supercar category during 2004 was by far a much better showing than the previous campaign, and one which he hopes he can build on this term. It's goodbye to the Peugeot and hello to the Citroën Zara for John McCluskey. He now has the ex-Kenneth Hansen car, which produces around 520 brake horsepower and is capable of 0 to 60 in less than a second and a half with a top speed of 140 miles an hour. It's a fantastic vehicle to get his hands on, but John admits there's still a few things to be improved.
We're just finding it hard to get it off the line. The boost seems to keep dipping down for some reason, but the lads seem to have it sorted now. We had a good start in the second heat. It's 10 years more advanced than the Peugeot, so in theory it obviously should be an awful lot better car. We have a good bit of learning to do with it, you know, because of the left-hand drive and then the lads from the technical side of things. But other than that, it's a superb car. Yeah, we can't wait now to get going. This is only our second event, so I mean, as we get halfway through the year, maybe we should be well up to speed with the car, but hopefully we just keep pushing on as hard as we can.
Lawrence Gibson, for now, sticks with the Metro 6R4 that took him to 2nd overall last year, and that was remarkable in that the Irishman failed to win a Supercar or a Superfinal. But regular visits to the podium kept him firmly in the chase for the title until a huge crash at Pembrey that effectively ended his title aspirations, but he's back again, but still a little uncertain.
Yeah, I've always liked Lydden. It's one of the best circuits on the calendar. But a wee bit rusty. That's the first time out this year. First heat of a cylinder, but basically just because the car had been sitting about. This is the old car still after the accident last year, so we don't know how this extra weight's going to work. So we're going to do the first 3 events and then decide after that whether to stick with the Metro or maybe move on. Or believe it or not, I think maybe the extra weight is maybe even going to help me, but it remains to be seen.
There was no catching Dermot CARNEGIE last year, and he starts with a GB1 plate again for the 2005 season. Despite an indifferent start, the Irishman was almost unbeatable as he successfully retained his crown. And there has been talk for some time now of retirement from the sport, but that seems to be on hold again for now.
Well, nothing has changed my mind. I'd say we'll see how it goes anyway for the first few events and play it by ear. Well, we're running strictly to the European regulations with weights and restrictors and the car preparation and everything like that, so it is a bit different. The cars haven't quite as much power as they had in the past, but and we're getting there anyway, so we're not too bad. All the cars are equal now, so it's much the same for everybody.
The cars may now be equal, but the qualifying times during the morning heats were anything but that. The Panoramic was more of a bedding-in session for the former champion. A cracked pin in one of the pistons during testing a few days before the Lydden event meant an engine rebuild and a cautious, if not nervy, performance in the opening 2 heats for an eventual row 3 spot in the Supercar final grid. Dermot CARNEGIE and the new-look Ford Focus didn't exactly set Lydden Hill alight during the heats, but we have seen this sort of performance from the veteran before, and he, as well as anybody, knows that it's in the finals where it really matters, and he'll surely prove a lot more menacing there. He starts from row 2. Question marks still hang over the car in which Kenneth Hansen won the 2003 European Rallycross Championship. There was no dream pole position debut for John McCluskey's Citroën Zara WRC. Instead, it's the outside spot on the front row for him. Lawrence Gibson recorded the fastest time during Heat 2. Grid positions in the British Rallycross Championship are determined by who gets the fewest points in 2 of the 3 qualifying heats. 4 points for 4th place in Heat 1, followed by 1 point for 1st in Heat 2, totals 5 points, 1 fewer than McCluskey, Carnegie and Steve Mundy in the Ford Focus. Things didn't look to be going so well for Will Gollop when the oil pressure warning light on his Ford Focus RS lit up during the opening qualifying heat, forcing him to withdraw temporarily. But thankfully though, a faulty sensor was to blame for that, and he was able to rejoin, posting the fastest time of the day in the 3rd and final heat, almost 2 seconds quicker than any of his rivals. So Will Gollop sets the pole, followed by Lawrence Gibson, John McCluskey, and then its current champion Dermot Carnegie back on row 2. As well as a great turnout of drivers, there are plenty of the avid spectators that always support the championship wherever it travels, and they are never disappointed for their loyalty. We are heading towards the start of the first race at Lydden Hill, which is the Supercar final, and that should provide plenty of action for the spectators as well as ourselves. So the Supercar A final entrants are making their way up to their grid spots. That's Will Gollop, the 28 car on pole position, Lawrence Gibson, the trusty Metro 6R4 that we thought was never going to be seen again after incidents last year, the Citroën Zara in 3rd place. Oh, and there's a jump start, and I think that was Steve Mundy. Steve Mundy it was. He's at the back of the grid now, and hopefully will get away this time without further delay. Engine management systems all ready to chime in. Away we go. Lawrence Gibson just boxed down a little bit. We're on board the new Ford Fiesta of Pat Doran. This is his first final in this new Ford Fiesta, but out in front it's Will Gollop who's got the Ford Focus out in the lead, and just being kicked up as they go through the loose section. We're on board now with Pat Doran, 5th place for him in the Fiesta. Big learning curve for him, but it's Will Gollop that's leading. John McCluskey is up to 2nd after getting past that man there. 3rd place Lawrence Gibson in the Metro 6R4. Dermot Carnegie in the Ford Focus. 4th Pat Doran in the Fiesta is in 5th place, but there is the Citroën Zara. Again, learning curve for the man behind the wheel of that car, John McCluskey. And damage to the windscreen of the Ford Focus of Dermot Carnegie, who really is giving it everything, but he's quite a way off this leading 3 now, and a lot of work to do if he's going to try and get on the podium. Beautiful movement, sideways style there for race leader Will Gollop, just looking so strong. That Ford Focus RS seems to be providing enough for him too. And hanging on into 3rd place as Carnegie goes wide was Lawrence Gibson. Carnegie off and back on again, but he's lost a position. That should put him behind. Yes, it does. The new 4th place man, the Ford Fiesta of Pat Doran, who's coming under a lot of pressure from Carnegie. Interesting to see the 2 Fords side by side. And Pat Doran is not going to give that away easily. He'll be giving it everything he's got to keep the current champion right behind him, and hanging on to that beautifully. It looks a nimble little Fiesta, and he looks as if he's closing slightly on the back of Lawrence Gibson. We're on board with Pat once more, sideways on the gravel, hangs on to it. Got to keep it steady as you get back onto the tarmac, and Dermot Carnegie, not being able to do anything about him, gets right close under braking this time. That's where he went off and just threatens to run wide again. But Will Gollop out in front has got this looking pretty good indeed. and if he can take an opening win in the final, that will please him very much indeed. A bit of a gap, bit of an advantage there, second maybe or so that he's got in time advantage over the second place man John McCluskey, who is now coming under pressure from Lawrence Gibson. The Metro man is fighting back and pressurising that far more advanced Citroën as they go side by side. Little bang of wheels there. The Metro's through. Lawrence Gibson's nailed it back into second place, and now Carnegie moves up to fourth. What a thrilling first final of the year for the Supercar A final. Will Gollop out in front, different league, and pulling away all the time. Lawrence Gibson though in second. Can he close the gap down as we go back to fourth place with Dermot Carnegie in the Ford Focus, who's looking at that Citroën Zara ahead of him, and wonder if he can do anything about that. On the loose stuff goes our race leader Pat Duran, back down into fifth place as Carnegie's into third now. Carnegie into third, and Will Gollop still has a lead over second place, but it's been reduced now by Lawrence Gibson, the excellent man, and the Metro's going to finish second, but it's Will Gollop that goes over the line. Carnegie third, then it's McCluskey and Duran. So great start to the year. Will Gollop taking the lead, and Lawrence Gibson up to second place after a great fight. Dermot Carnegie in third. 35 points for Will Gollop to lead the championship table, whilst it's 8 points less for Lawrence Gibson. Third place is current champion Dermot Carnegie. Will Gollop certainly happy to open the bubbly and will spray it to the crowd, but he won't be drinking any until later in the day after he's finished driving. A great opener to the first round and to the championship, but it's only going to get closer as the guys with the new cars get to know them better. And it's not just the supercars that make up a day's racing in the British Rallycross Championship. One of the other high-speed classes is the Stockhatch production cars, such as this one, Simon White's Peugeot 205 GTI, which are restricted to 1600 cc's, 2 valves per cylinder, and controlled tuning modifications as well. This may be the cheaper end of Rallycross, but it is none less exciting at all. Jamie Lee in car 687 is another Peugeot 205 driver, which is pretty much the most popular car in the class, and its second fastest GTI in qualifying behind Julian Godfrey's, who ended the session third quickest overall. When Julian isn't racing Rallycross cars, he's busy building them. In fact, he's a specialist in many forms of motorsport. Well, the weekend started pretty well when he finished in the top 3 in all of the qualifying heats, and that means he'll start on the front row of the Stockhatch final grid. Well, the Peugeots have always been strong, and there may be several of them, but now we're seeing the Citroën Saxos coming through, and they started to dominate through the qualifying session, and that could just be a taste of things to come throughout the season this year. The first one belongs to Rodney Green, who was quickest in the day's opening heat and was on the pace throughout the next 2, finishing with respectable times in all of them. There were no wins in the name of Rodney Green last season, but he did manage a couple of second places and should be due for a win this year. In the Citroën Saxo qualifying 1-2, it was Don Shannon who was the fastest in heats 2 and 3, and denying Rodney Green a pole position in the process, but Shannon won't be fretting too much about that, just looking forward to turning it into a possible race win. Don Shannon on pole, but he won't be having it all his own way if any of the others have their way, and a start might just be the deciding factor. Four laps on the schedule for the Stockhatch A final, and they will be 4 closely contested ones as well, so we're looking forward to that. This is Julian Godfrey, car number 725, a 1.6 Peugeot 205 GTI, the choice of many boy racers on the roads for a long time, but the Saxo VTR has taken that mantle for quite some time, and these are great little cars, especially when you get them in this sort of trim. Away we go then, clean start, no delays, and who's it going to be? It's looking like a good start for Julian Godfrey, but the two Citroëns are side by side. Godfrey though gets a perfect line into the corner, very quick and smooth into there, and it's the 777 car into fourth place of Simon White. Godfrey, Shannon Green and Simon White 790. Tony Lynch slots into 5th place, and Paul Hay in the Fiesta XR2. What a great car they used to be, and well, and still are really. He's in 6th place. So it's Julian Godfrey and Don Shannon. First and second, Rodney Green in the 745 car in the green Citroen Saxo VTR that's trying to do something about it, just inches ahead now. And does he make it? Yes, he does. He gets an advantage as they go onto the rough. But I have to say, race leader is already pulling out some time. Julian Godfrey's just going away with it. And now 3rd place is starting to come under pressure from Simon White in the Peugeots. Peugeot leading Citroen 2nd, 3rd, then it's a Peugeot again. And there is the Fiesta of number 615, who's dropped back a little bit. Paul Hay is starting to be caught by those behind him, Tony Lynch and Jamie Lee, who brings up the field in 8th place at the moment. But that's the man in 4th, that is Simon White. And distinctive colouring on his car, 4th place at the moment, and looking right up the rear of that yellow Citroen, and looking to see if he can do anything about it at all. Tip the cars into the turn, which leads them right onto the dirt again. You can see a slightly darker line on part of it where the water's still being held on this part where the organisers have just watered it down to hold the surface a little bit more. But this close battle for 3rd place, and these two are now starting to be caught by 5th place behind them, and quite close at the lead now. It looks as if Rodney Green has made up some ground on the Peugeot of 725, Julian Godfrey, but he's going to have to make up more ground and do it very quickly if he's going to try and battle for the lead, because Julian Godfrey is putting in some quick times, and of course the checkered flag will be looming up very shortly as well. So we thought the Citroens were possibly going to set the pace, but it's the Peugeot that has turned out to be the dominant one. Back onto the rough stuff as well. And that car looks to be pretty stable, pretty neat. The Citroen just seems to be teetering a little bit more, but again, it's just about the setup on the cars, which of course differs from the drivers and how they like to have those cars. But it's all going very well for Julian Godfrey, and Rodney Green trying hard but can't do it. 3rd place is still the 2nd of the Citroens, and a few order changes going on behind. Kirk Twyman in 5th place, and another of the Peugeot 205s, the white one there, as we look at 2nd place once again. And Rodney Green just starting to lose a little bit of ground there, a little squeak from the tyres as they go round the asphalt. Well, not going to be a win for him this time out, but it's been a good, encouraging round for him. Of course, same with all the guys learning about their cars again, getting back their driving skills, coping with the conditions. And of course the setup, everything always seems different after you've had that winter layoff, and there's been very few chances for the guys to get to grips with these cars. But now they're in the season proper, and of course great excitement as this championship will evolve over the year. But the checkered flag is out, and the winner's name will be penciled in as Julian Godfrey. Well, the Peugeot may not be the newest of the models on the grid, but it proved to be the fastest today in the hands of Julian Godfrey, scoring the opening win of the season despite the challenge, and a stiff one from Rodney Green. With the race points awarded, it's Rodney Green that tops the table, but it's still very early days to be thinking about championships. Great racing from the Stockhatch boys, and it's the Supermodified cars next. Next into the limelight at Lydden Hill are the Supermodifieds, another highly competitive class. And Dave Ward's back again this season with a Vauxhall Astra, and he's yet another that's happy to be back at Lydden Hill, but still unsure about how many of the rounds he will be competing in, but he was encouraged with the way that the heats had gone.
It's my favourite circuit, local circuit to me. Come down and have a bit of fun today, just see how the championship's going to go. But we're having a good time today, we're doing well. First heats we were quickest. Second heat, unfortunately, there's a car lost it on the loose. Made the circuit a bit longer. I think we lost some time there, but it's been good today. 1600 is not really a big enough engine for the championship at the moment. Some of the circuits are getting a bit long. We'll see how we go. If we're doing well today and next one goes well in Ireland, we'll carry on.
Another trusty Vauxhall Corsa on the entry list is that of Gordon Rogers with the unmissable bright green bodywork. There's no having to get used to new car problems for him. He just has to get himself used to driving once again. The season campaigner only took part in some of last year's rounds. The hopes are that he will do the whole of this season, and he should be always factored in for wins and could be in with a chance of the championship.
Excellent, it's just right, the conditions are good. A little bit of dust on Chessons in the other one, but yeah, I think it's going to be very good. I think, especially down to 8 rounds, it'll be good for everybody and no car problems at all, just a little bit of rustiness in the driver.
It's Renault power for Mike Sella with the little Nimbo Clio V6. He was another who didn't compete in all of the rounds last season, but still finished the year in 6th place in the championship, having had a couple of good rounds. A bigger, more concerted effort this year could see him pushing for more places in the top 3, but there are a lot of other very experienced men that he has to come up against to do that. Des Wheatley also did a part-season campaign to finish 5th, but he was much more in the points, and given half a chance will be in the running again this year. But that chance seemed to be a slim one at the opening round. Despite all his experience, he was not having an easy time.
No, the car's not run particularly well. The last round we were at was very wet, and the engine builder was there and put a different map in to try and give us better traction on the loose, and it felt very good, so we thought, oh, we'll leave it for this meeting and try it in the dry, and it's not as good. But there's been water in the loose sections, and the loose has been very slippy. So we're struggling for tyre choice and what damper settings to use, whether to try and set it up for the dry tarmac or these watered sections. It is difficult.
This is not the new car that Dave Bellerby was intending to roll out in readiness to start the new season with, as despite a great deal of work, it wasn't going to be ready in time. So it's a rent-a-car, this time though for Dave Bellerby, the defending class champion. But the standing car was not behaving quite as it should have been doing, causing a few problems and adding to the difficulty that Dave always seems to have in getting to grips with this Kent circuit.
I've never really been comfortable with the front wheel drive, and looking at the cars I'm seeing that the rear wheel drive are probably the way to go, and so we're building a new Peugeot 206 and making it with rear wheel drive. We had a slight problem at last minute, and so we didn't get it here, so we're double driving with this one. Keeps cutting out on us, in all fairness. We found an electrical fault. The charging system hasn't been working, and when the fan cuts in it stops the engine, so hopefully we've resolved it now. I struggle with Lydden, always have. Last Easter's accident didn't help, but we're okay today. Driving the rear wheel drive car, I feel a little bit more at home.
As per the other classes, it's 3 heats that sets up the grid for the day's big 4-lap final. Mike Sella finished Heat 1 in a lowly 10th place, and from then on it was always going to be a hard task to pull himself up the order, but that didn't stop him trying. 7th in Heat 2, then became 5th after the 3rd. Meanwhile, Mike Coyne had his best run in Heat 2, but couldn't better it when he didn't finish Heat 3. Still trying hard to sort out his best plan here this weekend, Des Wheatley got himself into 5th as the cars crossed the finish line of Heat 1, and then in the 2nd was only able to equal that result. But in the 3rd and final heat, he was able to go one better and get himself up to 4th, but there's still some stiff opposition ahead of him. Meanwhile, Dave Ward started off well with a win in Heat 1, but that was his pinnacle when he then dropped a place in both of the remaining heats. Dave Bellerby was busy getting to grips with the Lotus Exige hire car in Heat 1, but then he went on to take 3rd place, so couldn't complain too much. In Heat 2, the heat was generally of a slightly slower pace, but he took the win that time out. starting heat 3, again looking for another win. The plan didn't go to order this time, and he brought the Lotus over the line for a second place. That still put him in a good position, and at least the problems with the Lotus were behind him. Gordon Rogers also had a first, second and third place in the heat, with heat 3 providing the win for him with the fastest pace of all the preliminaries. With Ward, Bellerby and Rogers all having 1, 2, 3s in the heat, that ties them on the grid, so the positions come from the fastest times. On to the A final for the Supermodified cars, and if it's any way as good as the other finals have been, then we should be on the edge of our seats. Gordon Rogers, number 83 in the very bright green Vauxhall Corsa on pole. Dave Bellerby in the very bright yellow Lotus Exige, ready for the start of this 4-lap race. Away we go, and it looks to be a good start for the Lotus. A lot of wheel spin, but he got that down when he needed to and gets away. Gordon Rogers going with him, but Dave Ward's also got another good start, and I think he's got the advantage in second place, but Mike Sellar's up there and pushing hard for third place. A great start into turn 1 with cars everywhere. Gordon Rogers losing a little bit of control of his car then as he fought for position, but it's almost sedate at the front inside Dave Bellerby's Lotus Exige. You wouldn't think that there was so many cars battling hard behind him. And leading that battle in second place, Mike Sellar, Dave Ward's in third, Des Wheatley, Gordon Rogers and Mike Corn in the blue. Vauxhall Nova is in sixth place, but this race is far from over, except at the front it just seems to be already a done deal that this man's going to take the lead as he goes onto the dirt. Not a flinch from that Lotus. They really seem to have got it balanced and sorted now. And the current champion in this class is doing well. Dave Ward, I'm not sure whether he's got a puncture there or a problem, but he went very wide and he doesn't seem to be getting back on the pace very quickly. So I think that's the end of Dave Ward as far as this race is concerned. Race leader Dave Bellerby, second place Mike Sellar, he's going well in that little V6 Clio, and third place is Des Wheatley. Des Wheatley looking for a way past if he can find it. The bottom of that front splitter seems to have come away underneath the Clio. Shouldn't be too many problems for him though. And Des Wheatley in this little Metro GTI hanging on to the back of him, and he really is driving the struts off that little car as they go onto the rough stuff once more. And that was Mike Coyne, I think we saw in fifth place. Gordon Rogers losing out the place before, and Des Wheatley just ready to have a look on the inside then if Mike Sellar went wide, but he didn't. He kept it in control as they go on the rough, and out in the lead, no problems at all for Dave Bellerby. That battle for second rages. Gordon Rogers is now having to try and fight to get that place back from Mike Coyne in the Vauxhall Nova. Front dips as he just touches the brakes before gets the power back on, feeds it through nicely. You can hear the car working. And that Lotus just looking great. Not a car that you would instantly think about being a Rallycross car, but it's certainly proving well in this modified A final. All the cars you can see through the window, they're the spectators. They are all around this circuit, and they certainly are being rewarded with some great action today. 134 it says on the side of that car. There's a yellow tape over the numbers 1 and 3 to make the car number 4, because he's sharing that car this weekend, but doesn't have to do it anymore because he comes over the checkered flag, and the battle for second stays exactly the way it was. The most dominant win of the day by Dave Bellerby, who will be hoping that his new Peugeot will let him repeat that. And a great battle for second place between Mike Sellar and also Des Wheatley. Dave Bellerby on top of what looks like it's going to be a very close class battle this season. Electrical gremlins firmly behind him. Dave Bellerby starts his title defence in the best possible way and proved that a perfect start can win the race for you.
You're always pressured out there. It gets off the line extremely well, and you've got to keep them behind you, and we seem to manage to do that today. Had a few little problems with the car, did the business in the end. Hopefully my new car, the Peugeot 206, should be out for the next round. We had a little problem in the build, or it would have been here, but it's very close now, and we'll be testing it in a week or so, I believe. Fingers crossed.
He might not be showing it, but that really is a very happy Dave Bellerby.